World War I was the first war to be fueled by oil. Its mechanized warfare killed 30 million. In the final British, French, and American offensives, 12,000 barrels of oil every day were being used. A Berlin to Baghdad pipeline proved a crucial component in an amoral war between trade rivals, with hundreds of Iraqi tribesmen poisoned by mustard gas, as Europe's great powers vied for desert oil. It prompted Thomas Hardy, commenting on its morality, to say that after 2,000 years of mass, we've got as far as poison gas. Bertrand Russell noted war never decided who was right, only who was left. How was the world ruled and led to war? The satirist Karl Kraus would ask himself in 1918. And Kraus answered, "Diplomats lie to journalists, then believe their own lies when they read their lies in print." Just before World War II, an oil cartel called the Big Three had started to eye the vast reserves of the Soviet Union, leading Henry Ford of Ford Motors and Prescott Bush to invest in the regimes of Nazi Germany and Fascist Italy. They hoped to profit from Germany's invading Russia for its oil, and in 1933, the U.S. commercial attaché based in Berlin reported to the State Department in Washington, "In 2 years, Germany will have enough oil and gas for a long war. Standard Oil of New York is furnishing millions of dollars to help." The commercial attaché added incriminatingly, revealing Standard Oil was supplying the Nazis with the technology to enable them to conduct winter tank operations. The US was plying the Nazis with ethyl lead for engine efficiency, and they were sharing the secrets of synthetic rubber. Thus, without Standard Oil, the Luftwaffe might not have got airborne, and London been spared the blitzkrieg that killed 60,000. As bombs fell, the US Ambassador Joe Kennedy, a former bootlegger, watchful of his investments, walked through St. James's Park. "I'll bet you 5-1, any sum, that Hitler will be in Buckingham Palace in 2 weeks," Kennedy gleefully told a friend, Harvey Clemmer. At the end, over 50 million lives were lost in a resource war, naively thought of as the good guys versus bad guys, whereas oil was its hidden current, such as when Asia's oil fields were cut off, Japan's bombing Pearl Harbor would follow. In 1944, the journalist John T. Flynn filleted the US mindset. The enemy aggressor is always pursuing a course of larceny, murder, rapine, and barbarism. We are always moving forward with high mission. A destiny imposed by the deity to regenerate our victims while incidentally capturing their markets, to civilize savage and senile and paranoid peoples while blundering accidentally into their oil wells. Since when the new Ahab reduces democracy to oil slick, as when Mossadegh wished to nationalize Iran's oil, the US mounts a coup against his democratic government, for his democracy disrupts their fuel requirements. Likewise, the Vietnam War wasn't to stop communism. It was fought so that Standard Oil could gain access to unexplored oil resources beneath the South China Seas, clearly identified in the Hoover Resource Report. Ho Chi Minh, the former Parisian pastry cook from Vietnam, who'd heroically kicked the French out of his country, knew of the report's economic significance to Washington, and by taking on America, he'd become Moby Dick. Even the deceptively mild-mannered President Carter in 1980 threatened nuclear war over oil fields in the Gulf, or, as he called them, the vital interests of the US of A. For as regards oil, the US must always be first in line. In September of that same year, the US would urge Iraq to attack its neighboring state of Iran and to seize oil-rich provinces in Iran's western regions, resulting in a deadly chain reaction. Then the US felt threatened by Iraq's high profile within OPEC, whose disposal of Gulf oil the US wished to control. So it now targeted Iraq, while the US stock market licked its lips. with every oil company's profits soaring in anticipation. I'm delighted that I've been invited out here today to salute you, who, in my view, are doing the Lord's work, said George Bush Sr., addressing U.S. air crews in January 2000 as they prepared bombing missions on Iraq. In 1992, Bush Sr. had invaded Somalia with 20,000 troops, while he pretended it was a humanitarian mission, though it was to protect the interests of oil companies in the region, some oilmen from Bush Sr.'s native Texas. They'd bankrolled his political career, and he wished to pay them back. For didn't he, Bush, have sons waiting to inherit his mantle? And didn't he wish to lubricate these fine sons' passage into politics by obliging his friends, greedily drilling in the Horn of Africa? Thus, 1,500 Somalis would die paving the way for Bush Sr.'s son to be another oil president, one described by John Sessions as a mental defective who will do what he's told by the petrochemical majors. Bush is a Fifth Amendment cokehead, the president was described as. So, what state is Wales in? Bush would say to Charlotte Church. She said, it's a separate country next to England. And he said, oh, okay. Church added, I think he thought Wales was in America. The rationale behind Bush's war in Afghanistan was exposed in 1998, when the UNICOL Vice President John J. Maresca recommended to a Senate committee the Taliban be removed from power to facilitate UNICOL's Trans-Afghanistan pipeline. However, this was resented by a Saudi sheikh interviewed that same year. The American imposes himself on everyone. By the testimony of relief workers in Iraq, the American-led sanctions resulted in the death of more than 1 million Iraqi children. All of this is done in the name of American interests. We believe that the biggest thieves in the world and the terrorists are the Americans. The only way for us to fend off these assaults is to use similar means. We do not worry about American opinion, said the sheikh, or the fact that they place prices on our heads. John Miller conducted the interview in northern Afghanistan, and the sheikh in question was Osama bin Laden. Ahab's fanaticism had morphed into a fundamentalist oil worship, and just as whales' teeth were carved into scrimshaws, so U.S. Special Forces would cut off the fingers of Afghan victims to send home as trophies of their country's oil wars. Likewise, on November 2nd, 2010, Laurie and Lindsay, two cheerleaders for the Miami Dolphins, would autograph bombs aboard the USS Theodore Roosevelt, bombs that were headed for Afghanistan, bombs to add to the 31 million pounds of explosive that have already been dropped since 2001, 14,049 metric tons of bombs whose vengeful detonation marries U.S. dreams to Afghan nightmares. For all wars are resource wars, spuriously dressing themselves up as conflicts between good and evil, with protagonists sporting shiny medals and meretricious uniforms designed to convey the nobility of their cause. A cause where the successors to Rockefeller's Standard Oil, the Seven Sisters, have carte blanche to change the Third World into Cinderella. They'd lurk in the shadows while lies were spread about Iraq's megaweapons. Then they'd move in for the kill after 1 million Iraqis had died.